Kate, where did you go to college?
I am an Indiana State Sycamore.
A graduate of ISU out in Terre Haute, Indiana. And how much did it cost for a 4-year degree? What was tuition in ISU when you went?
Well, luckily, ISU has this tuition agreement plan where, so I'm from Illinois and was an out-of-state student. They have a plan that allows you, I think, to pay 125% of in-state tuition. So I think it was around $10,000.
So you're a carpetbagger from Illinois.
What does that mean?
A carpetbagger? Someone
Yeah.
from out of state who comes in, and it's mainly for politicians. All right. So say that number again.
I think it was around 10,000.
10,000. So probably 40,000 for the 4 years you spent there, right?
Yes.
Do you feel like that was worth the education you received and the career you have now?
Absolutely.
Okay. You said you had a scholarship, right?
I did. I was fortunate enough to receive the Network's Professional Development Scholarship, which paid for just about all of my tuition.
Had you not had those scholarships, would you have taken out $40,000 in loans to attend Indiana State?
That's a great question. As a financial planner, I've always been well aware of money, and my dad really talked me into not taking out loans. So if I didn't get the scholarship at ISU, I would have gone to a community college in DuPage County.
And maybe had the same career you have now, or how do you think?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
Hard to say. How much is too much for an education? That's a lot of on a lot of people's minds nowadays, especially when that amount is being financed by student loans. Hi, my name is Chris Wakefield.
And I'm Kate Arndt.
And on this show, we are going to explore what makes our economy tick. We'll interview the experts, learn how economic changes can impact you at home, and we'll find a way to make it make sense. Episode 6, Student Loans.
This podcast is brought to you by Bedel Financial Consulting. Founded in 1989, our client-first approach is built on transparency and trust. No commissions, no products, no conflicts of interest. Just confidence and peace of mind. Trust Bedel.
Over the last 30 years, the cost of yearly tuition at the average public 4-year college in America has gone from about $4,100 to over $10,700. That's an increase of over 60%, obviously vastly outpacing the rate of inflation. So how have students over the last 30 years dealt with the rapid and constant increase in college tuition? Estimates show that over half of students graduate or leave college with some form of student loan debt. A Forbes.com study shows that currently student borrowers owe over, get this, Kate, have you guess, how much do you think is currently owned by all student borrowers on student loans?
Oh, all borrowers?
Across the board. How many
think it's
active
probably-
student loans?
It's not with the B, with a T. Trillions.
1.75 trillion is currently owed on student loans, with the average borrower owing more than $28,900. To get the full picture of how student loan debt can affect working professionals, I went out and found a working professional with student loan debt.
My name is Andrew Fry. I am a proposal manager for a large global tech company.
I met Andrew at the City Market in downtown Indianapolis. Kate, do you want to take a guess at what a proposal manager does?
I have no idea. Maybe they vet projects.
When a company says, oh, we need a new software or suite of services to provide this or to do this, let's take that to market and see what's out there. And then they submit a document that's a request for information, request for proposal, and then it's either public or private. And so I lead the teams that respond to that, from different pricing experts to implementation to how the solution is going to be configured and architected to the sales manager to responding to all those questions.
Simple, right? Yeah, I still don't know what he does. To prepare for this exciting career in proposal management, Andrew went to IUPUI, Indianapolis, but his degree wasn't exactly tailor-made for this field.
No, I went to school, I was a lit major, so it wasn't quite creative writing, it was creative critiquing. But as a liberal arts degree, it was very broad-based and applicable across the realm. So when I initially graduated, I tried to stay in the arts. I had a lot of experience in editing and publishing. So I tried to translate that to, a bunch of different local places trying to get a job in editing or publishing. That didn't pan out well in 2010, 2011, just because of the way everything was with the economy. So I took it to the corporate world. After a couple years working in the service industry, finally landed something in the corporate world, translating that kind of editing, publishing, document flow, document management, dotting I's, crossing T's kind of a thing.
Like many new graduates in the post-Great Recession era, Andrew had to change his career prospects to fit what was in demand at the time. But it seems like from the start, Andrew had a huge hill to climb when it came to funding his education. I asked him if he knew, as a high school senior, how things like college tuition worked.
I thought I did, but not really. I mean, I knew that in general, I could attend IUPUI locally for cheaper. It was still much more of a commuter college back then, so I was still living at home for that first bit, and then would drive into classes. And I knew that was more expensive than something like an Ivy Tech, but cheaper than something like going to actual Purdue or IU Bloomington or Ball State or something out of state. So exact costs never really crossed my mind, and particularly with that first semester, I just went into it because that's what you're supposed to do.
When it came to paying for his college courses, Andrew said he did what everyone else does. He filled out his FAFSA and started filling out applications for things like loans, grants, and scholarships.
I had a scholarship. It was a very small thing. Even then, I knew that it was because it was $500 per year, per semester scholarship, which is pennies on the dollar even back then, and that was known to me, just for being an ancestor or relative of somebody from 100 years ago. It was great. But that was a lot of paperwork to fill out just to say $500. But I did it. I should have done it for more things in hindsight.
In a bit of bad journalism here on my part, Kate, I did not follow up and ask Andrew who is an ancestor what. That could have been a really cool story.
I'm wondering
but
if it's an alumni scholarship.
Maybe. How did you feel when you were told by ISCU that you had a full ride? What was your reaction?
Oh my gosh, it was the best day ever. I mean, there was an interview process, an application process, an in-person interview day process. So finding out that I was one of the lucky few was awesome.
While we can never say exactly how much, it's likely Andrew could have qualified for more scholarships and student aid, had there been someone there to help him through the process. Obviously, you were going to need a lot more than $500 a semester to attend a major university. So, Andrew did what many other students in his shoes have done. He took out a student loan. I asked him to bring his loan agreement and paperwork to our interview.
It looks like the oldest ones were for around $4,000, and then another for $6,000.
Altogether, Andrew took out about 10 federal student loans for a total of about $34,000. And how about the interest rates on those loans?
Currently, those are sitting at 6.8, 6.8. The lowest one is 4.5%, because they're all subsidized and unsubsidized, and they are not consolidated at all. So across my federal student loans, I just have the original 10 subsidized and unsubsidized.
The average interest rate for his federal student loans is a little over 6%. All right, Kate, pop quiz. Let's quickly explain what it means to have a subsidized student loan and an unsubsidized student loan. Do you want to give it a shot?
Okay, a subsidized loan means that the interest is paid while you're in school, An unsubsidized loan is when the interest is not paid, so it's accumulated and added on to the outstanding principal.
Very good. A subsidized loan is pretty much needs-based, and the interest is paid by the government, whereas an unsubsidized loan, that's not the case. So a really quick explanation of what those mean, because you hear those a lot when talking about student loan debt. So we know that Andrew has about 10 different federal student loans, subsidized and unsubsidized. We know that they are a mix, and we also know that he's paying on average an interest rate of about 6% for each loan. Like we said earlier, the total amount of loans initially was about $34,000. But now that Andrew is out of college and has been working for the last 10 or so years, what does that balance look like for all of his loans?
For a total principal balance right now of $48,329.
Kate, you and I just grimaced together. Andrew's loan debt has grown over $14,000 since he initially took them out. And to make matters worse, Andrew has not been paying on these federal student loans.
Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Not a bad thing, but why is that?
It's in forbearance.
Exactly. Andrew also says,
that does not take into account the private student loan I took out right after I went back.
Quote, right after I went back. After his first year in college at IUPUI, Andrew took a bit of a break.
So I ended up, after my first year, so my second semester, not fully dropping out, but academically taking a sabbatical. And I didn't go back, I think, for another year and a half.
And what happened financially when Andrew came back is a bit confusing and a little bit heartbreaking.
And when I came back, I didn't know how the system worked. So for whatever reason, my student loans weren't showing up. I wasn't being offered the same things, or I didn't understand how it worked. And I just saw the bills that were coming due, or I wasn't going to be able to sign up for classes for the next semester. So I had to co-sign. I had to get a private student loan through Chase, where my grandmother was the co-signer.
When Andrew re-enrolls at IUPUI, he didn't know his previous bundle of student loans could still be used to pay for his tuition. All he had to do was re-sign the promissory note, but no one told him. He thought he had to start all over again with new loans. And seeing the bills coming in, he panicked. He went to Chase Bank for a private student loan.
And that was for, it was about $35,000 on that private student loan. $32,000 and change.
So now he has an extra $32,000 in debt, and the interest rate on that private loan carries a variable interest rate that is currently sitting at 7.37%. And that's why Andrew is not paying off his federal student loans just yet. The last 10 years, he's slowly been working on paying off the private student loans first. Any thoughts?
Ouch. It pains me to hear that.
I asked him how much longer he can keep getting deferments and forbearance for his federal student loans.
I have absolutely no idea. I think the pause from COVID and everything has given me the time to go back and look and reevaluate. But because I'm also paying on the private student loan, I would not say an exorbitant amount, but a large chunk a month. It's like, oh, well, now I have a second student loan that I'm going to start paying on that's also going to be that amount. Like, I can't fit that in my budget. And we're two working adults with two kids, and I don't know how we would be able to when it comes out.
Andrew says that he's been paying about $400 to $500 a month on his private student loans for the last 10 years, and he's just reached the point where he's paid off the interest and can start making payments on the actual principal balance, but he still has a very long way to go. I asked him if he was aware of the way payment schedules and interest worked on loans when he took them out.
I was not. I mean, I knew I would have to pay back student loans. I didn't take them out assuming that I wasn't going to. It was just, you had no concept at the time of how much it was going to cost, what your payment plans were going to be. You know, if I'm young back then and I'm thinking, all right, so my car payment is like $300 a month right now. It can't be much worse than that, right? And then when you get out and find out just how much it is and how little is actually going to the balance, right? You know, being a homeowner several times over now, I understand how interest works on high balances. But at the time, you're not thinking that. You know, this is, you have to go to school and you have to get a degree. At the time, it felt very much like getting a bachelor's degree was the new college diploma, and you had to do it. And so you really I didn't feel like I had a choice. I had to just take the loans out so that I could pay for school, and I would just have to figure the rest out later when I, you know, had the job that I was going to get with my nice bachelor's degree.
Make It Make Sense is brought to you by Bedel Financial Consulting. Fee-only, comprehensive wealth management for all generations. Trust Bedel.
After my interview with Andrew, I still had a lot of unanswered questions about the student loan crisis that is facing so many today. So I went to talk to an expert.
My name is Meredith Carberry, and I am a senior wealth advisor at Bedel Financial Consulting.
My first question for Meredith was, how did things get this bad?
Well, I think there's a couple of factors when you think about student loan debt and how it's just increased so much. First of all, let's think about how much the cost of college has increased in the past 50 years.
Remember, the cost of college has risen more than 60% in the last 30 years.
So now kids can't work to put themselves through school like they used to be able to do in the 70s and 80s. It's just a much different scenario. So they're needing to borrow money in order to fill that gap. You know, it used to be that you could go to your public university for, you know, $3,000 a year, and now it's costing, you know, $25,000. We're very lucky here in the state of Indiana that, you know, our public schools are still reasonable compared to some of the other public schools in the area.
And even though students and parents really can't do anything about the rising cost of college, Meredith does have a couple of tips for those who may be looking at how much they should expect to spend on a college education.
A good rule of thumb when you're thinking about how much student loan you can take on, what's that appropriate amount, is kind of think about, you know, estimate what you think your starting salary is going to be when you get out of school. And you really should not have any more student loan debt than that.
So, Kate, let's try an experiment with Meredith's rule of thumb. She's saying that by the time you leave college, your student loan debt should be equal or less than your average first-year salary in your chosen profession. Let's use my career as an example. I work in marketing, and I'm a creative marketing director. Obviously, one wouldn't expect to get that kind of a job right out of college, so let's look at the position that's a bit more entry-level, let's say marketing assistant or marketing coordinator. Let's head over to Glassdoor and look up the average salary for someone in that position in central Indiana. Okay. Glassdoor shows me that the average salary for a marketing coordinator or entry-level marketing assistant is about $48,000 to $53,000. So we'll call it $50K. Now, let's go over to collegetuitioncompare.com and figure out which school I could afford to go to. On the high end, we have schools like Notre Dame, where tuition is over $58,000 a year.
Oh my goodness.
And DePaul University, where tuition is about $53,000 a year. On the opposite end, we have schools like Ivy Tech Community College, where tuition is about $4,600 a year, and Vincennes University, where it's about $6,400 a year. And that's just tuition. We also need to make sure that we have enough money for room and board, books, food, laundry, etc. So, knowing that our first year salary would be about $50,000, we need to make sure we are only financing about $12,500 a year for school expenses. So, if I don't have enough money in savings, scholarship, or a 529 plan, Meredith says my dream of going to Indiana University, where yearly expenses can be up to $24,000 a year, may be a bit on hold for a couple of years.
Well, I think you have to make some tough decisions. Maybe it's community college for a couple of years so that it's maybe not quite so expensive. And then, you go in with some credits to go to IU. Maybe it's that you work for a little bit before you can go into IU. Maybe you look to see if there's a work study program before you go to college. I think there's a lot of different options, but you just don't want to come out and you're just overwhelmed with debt.
She says a lot of students ignore this rule and go to a really expensive institution, and that's when they end up having to take out a private loan.
A lot of times what happens is when you're going to a school that's more expensive, you don't have the significant savings or the cash flow to pay for it. You only can qualify for so much between the direct student loans. Maybe your parents have even looked at the plus direct student loans, because that's the student loans that the parents are actually responsible for. And so that's just not enough. And then you have to go to a financial institution to get that private student loan to fill in to bridge that additional gap.
And unlike federal student loans, private student loans have very few layers of protection for borrowers when it comes to payment forbearance or forgiveness. One troubling trend is the rise in people who are just not paying back their loans. The debt is too much, and they've just given up. Statistics show that over 5.1 million borrowers have defaulted on their student loans, owing a total of more than $112 billion. I asked Andrew if he's ever considered just not paying back the student loans. He says for his private loans in particular, the one where his grandmother was the cosigner, that is not an option.
I do for other things, but specifically with this, because of her and that relationship I have with her, like that personal connection, I would never, ever consider doing that to her.
Meredith Carberry at Bedel Financial says that if the repayment restructure and forbearance aren't enough to keep your head above water, you still want to do anything possible to pay back those loans because the results could be disastrous for your finances.
If you just decide not to pay it, if you say, I'm finished, I'm over, I don't want to do this anymore, it is going to have a negative impact on your credit. You're going to because you do owe that loan. It is your obligation to pay that back. So they're going to report it to the credit agencies. You're going to get late charges and fees. And it's going to be really hard for you to go out and continue to finance things in the future because of this damage to your credit report.
After all he's been through, Andrew says he wishes he had an expert like Meredith to help him with this when he was entering college.
I have that personal experience, and my personal experience is I wish somebody had been there to say, now this is what's going to happen, this is how things are going to work. Here's how you can save some of these costs as well.
I asked Andrew, between his federal and private student loans, how much longer it would take to pay everything off.
Prior to this year or two, I just always assumed I'd be paying that as a monthly cost of living for the rest of my life. Like, what's retirement? I can't afford to put money in a 401k. I need that net back to pay on these student loans.
He says he sometimes thinks about what life would be like once or if he can ever get those loans paid off.
Yeah, it would be a big psychological and emotional relief, as well as a medium to large monthly budget financial relief as well.
But there is some good news on the horizon for Andrew. He recently sold his home and made a decent profit from that sale. He is considering using some of that windfall to pay off the remaining balance on his private student loan. Meredith says, if you are the parent of a small child who might be college bound, start saving now.
One of the best programs for education savings is the 529 plan. Anybody can participate in it, which is wonderful. There's no, you can't make too much money or too little money to be able to contribute to this 529 plan. And then every amount that you put in there, and it's invested, and then it grows over time. And whatever it grows to, if you use it for qualified education expenses, it grows completely tax-free. So it's a wonderful, wonderful tool to be able to use for education funding. Even if you start small, there's really no amount that's too small to start putting it in there, especially when you have a small child because of the compounding that it's going to get over time. It's just a really, really great tool to use for education funding. And the nice thing is that you can actually invest it age-based. So you can put it in there, say, I want to have this go age-based, so it gets more conservative as your child gets older, so you don't have to worry about that investment losing half of its value when they turn 18 and they're ready to go off to college. And then some states, especially like here in Indiana, we offer a state tax credit. So that's really beneficial because you get that tax credit on your state tax return. Other states offer tax credits or tax deductions. So it's a really great program. And you're not limited to what university you go to. You can go to any qualifying education university across the state, and even some trade schools.
Andrew Fry finds himself in the same position as a lot of other borrowers. They were told to go to college because a college degree helps you earn more money throughout your career. But now that he has that degree and a good career, he's still straddled with a mountain of debt.
I would argue we are in the best financial position we've ever been in as a family, as partners, as parents, and yet still don't feel like we're anywhere near the kind of stability or financial freedom to even think about kids' college right now.
So while Andrew continues to dig his way out of a mountain of student loan debt, and Meredith Carberry keeps helping Bedel Financial clients with college-aged children navigate the student loan world, and Kate also, we'll keep trying to make it make sense. Kate, we've reached the end of our season. Woo! Season 1 is over. How do you feel?
I'm feeling relieved. If you've made it this far, thank you.
We talked about a lot this year, and hopefully the powers that be will let us come back for a second season. We're planning on it. We have a lot of interesting topics. One you brought up in particular is weddings. I cannot wait to do an episode on weddings.
I've got some great stories.
So that'll be interesting. Thank you for listening this time around. Again, as always, we're produced by Bedel Financial. You can go to bedelfinancial.com. Every week, Kate and the team are writing articles about every financial topic under the sun. Student loans, insurance, inflation, whatever's in the news. It's over at bedelfinancial.com, and you can subscribe to the Bedel Financial blog and get that into your email inbox every single week. Any closing thoughts from you, Kate?
No.
You're speechless.
I am.
Is this what you thought it would be? When we started on this journey, however many months ago?
Yeah, it's been so long. No, it's not what I thought it would be. I always
It's
thought
worse.
people just, no, it's way better. It's there's a lot of planning that goes into these, and you do a great job with them. So
Good. Well, again, head over to bedelfinancial.com, BEDEL financial.com. If you are looking for a consultation, we can schedule one of those for you. A lot can happen. And Kate, as an advisor, I'm sure you can attest to the way Bedel is impacting the lives of clients.
I'm so lucky. I've got the best job helping people figure out their finances, get it on autopilot, help them make decisions and feel confident with their money.
You can follow Bedel Financial on social media also, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're also uploading lots of stuff to those platforms. So we thank you very much, and we'll see you for season 2.
Make It Make Sense is hosted by Kate Arndt and Chris Wakefield. It is produced by Bedel Financial and recorded at IBJ headquarters in Indianapolis, Indiana. The graphics are by the lovely Amy House. And for show notes and financial news and information, visit bedelfinancial.com/podcast.